What happens when a powerful black panther, once abandoned by time, falls into a deadly trap set by hunters? Weak and starving, the aging king struggles against the unforgiving pit of fate that hangs in the balance, until a sudden act of bravery changes everything. Stay tuned to witness a survival battle that will take your breath away. In the remote heart of the Nyamira Highlands, where mist drapes over thick jungles and silence rules the dawn, a black panther once reigned as shadow and myth. His name was Nyoka, a creature cloaked in midnight with eyes like molten gold, feared, respected, untouchable. For over a decade, he stalked the dense canopy, leaving no paw print, no sound, only stories. Hunters spoke his name in whispers, and villagers lit fires when they sensed his presence. But time, the one predator no beast can escape, had begun to take its toll. Nyoka moved slower now. His once fluid leaps were shorter, and his stealth, though still fearsome, faltered with age. On a grim, dry morning, following the fading scent of a wounded boar, he stepped where he should not have, onto a concealed hunter's pit, masked with dead leaves and old branches. The earth gave way. A thud cracked through the jungle. Nyoka lay motionless at the bottom of the trap, blood seeping from his flank. Dust choked the air. He rose shakily, tried to scale the jagged wall, but his claws scraped helplessly. The pit was too deep, the stone too slick. With every moment, the pain deepened, his breathing sharpened. Above, the sun crept higher. No sound of help, only the wind and the distant cry of vultures circling overhead. This was no longer a jungle Nyoka ruled. This was a prison of death. But fate hadn't finished with him yet. Not today, not this legend, not without a fight. As the dust settled in the jungle's throat, silence clung to the pit like a predator waiting to pounce. Nyoka groaned, the sound ragged and low, a painful whisper from a throat that once thundered with roars of dominion. Blood pooled beneath him, dark against the cracked stone. His hind leg throbbed, twisted awkwardly beneath his body, the injury from the fall cutting deep. Above, branches swayed gently, indifferent to his agony. The jungle carried on, uncaring. With trembling limbs, the old panther rose, muscles quivering under his weight. He scanned the walls, eyes sharp but dulled by exhaustion. He leapt, his claws scratched stone, then slipped. He crashed back down with a heavy grunt, pain shooting through every bone. Again and again, each attempt weaker than the last. The sun scorched overhead. Hunger gnawed at his belly. The wound in his side wept. Still, he clawed. Nyoka had never known mercy. Not from rival predators, not from man, not even from the unforgiving jungle. And yet, despite the futility, he refused surrender. His pride, the spirit that had made him a legend, held him upright even as his body betrayed him. Night fell like a shroud. Stars blinked coldly above, offering no hope, only light to witness his suffering. The pit echoed with shallow, labored breaths. He was alone, unseen, forgotten. But deep in the jungle, a whisper stirred. A distant footstep, a flicker of change. And though he could not see it, help, unbelievable, unexpected, was already on its way. At first, it was just a murmur in the underbrush, barely a shift in the rhythm of the forest. Nyoka's ears twitched, his senses dull from hunger and pain, yet the instinct that had kept him alive for years flickered awake. A soft crunch of leaves, then another. Someone, or something, was coming. Through the mist-filtered light above, a shadow moved. A boy, no older than 16, stepped cautiously toward the pit's edge. His name was Jabari, a forager's son with curious eyes and a heart stitched with tales of jungle spirits. He had heard the rumors of Nyoka, the ghost cat of the highlands, but he hadn't expected to find the legend dying in a hole. Their eyes met. One, ancient and clouded by pain. The other, young and alight with awe. For a heartbeat, the jungle seemed to pause. Jabari knelt, clutching his satchel. Inside, dried meat, rope, a small flask of water. He whispered gently, "You're real." Then, against every lesson drilled into him since childhood, he dropped a strip of meat into the pit. Nyoka growled faintly, not from rage, but confusion. Slowly, he crawled forward and sniffed it. He ate. Jabari's hands trembled as he tied the rope to a tree. He wasn't strong enough to lift the beast, but he could go for help. He could try. He looked down once more. The panther lay still, but not defeated. "I'll come back," Jabari whispered. And for the first time in days, Nyoka blinked, not in pain, but in belief. Morning light spilled through the canopy like liquid gold, dappling the forest floor and catching the dewdrops on every leaf. Nyoka, curled against the wall of the pit, lifted his head as distant voices echoed through the jungle. His ears perked. Could it be real? Branches snapped. Footsteps approached. Then, a flurry of movement at the edge of the pit. Jabari, breathless, returned with 2 forest rangers by his side. One of them, a weathered woman named Amina, stared into the pit with wide, disbelieving eyes. "It's him," she murmured. "The Ghost King." They didn't hesitate. The rangers knotted ropes around trees, lowered a long, sturdy plank, and fastened a harness together with Jabari's handmade sling. Carefully, Amina tossed down more dried meat while her partner whispered steady reassurances. Nyoka watched, wary but driven by desperation. His belly twisted with hunger, his muscles trembled, but survival stirred within him. The moment came. He stepped onto the plank. It creaked under his weight, but held. He climbed, slow, painful, deliberate. With each step, the crowd above held its breath. Jabari's fists clenched. Nyoka slipped once, claws scrambling, but caught himself. Finally, with a last guttural growl, he pulled free of the pit. He collapsed in the grass, sides heaving, eyes half-lidded in exhaustion. The rangers stood frozen. Jabari knelt near him, offering a water flask. Nyoka didn't run. He drank. And just like that, the legend was reborn, not in strength, but in the silent trust between man and beast, and a climb toward life. The morning mist clung to the jungle like breath on glass as Jabari returned. This time, not alone. 2 conservationists followed closely behind, machetes in hand, clearing a narrow path through the thickets. They were from the Nyamira Wildlife Trust, alerted by Jabari's desperate sprint through the village. One was Dr. Layla Omondi, a soft-spoken vet with steel in her spine. The other, a tracker named Mumo, who had once glimpsed Nyoka years ago and never forgot those golden eyes. At the pit's edge, the sight of the panther lying still below turned their urgency into action. Layla knelt and unzipped her case. Rope harness, tranquilizer, nutrient serum, gauze. Mumo secured the rigging to a sturdy fig tree while Jabari whispered encouragements. Nyoka stirred, eyes open, nostrils flaring at the scent of fresh meat lowered into the pit. He moved, sluggish but alive. With Layla's guidance, they fitted the harness from above. When the ropes tightened and Nyoka's weight shifted, the pulleys groaned. Inch by inch, the panther rose. His body hung limp but breathing, his tail flicking now and then, as if urging them to hurry. When he reached the rim, Jabari reached out, his small hand brushing the panther's flank. Nyoka didn't flinch. They laid him gently beneath a canopy. Layla injected a serum and cleaned the wounds, while Jabari poured water into a tin bowl. Nyoka drank, and there, under the emerald ceiling of Nyamira, the Ghost King opened his eyes, not as a legend fading into silence, but as a soul reborn. By the time Jabari returned with help, the sun had barely pierced the jungle canopy. 2 rangers from the Nyamira Wildlife Trust, seasoned but skeptical, followed him through the twisted undergrowth. They had heard stories of phantom cats and children chasing myths, but Jabari's urgency and tear-streaked conviction couldn't be ignored. When they reached the pit, silence fell. There he was, Nyoka, weakened, wounded, but alive. His eyes flicked upward as the rangers peered down, not with rage, not even fear, just a flicker of recognition. They wasted no time. A harness was lowered with trembling precision, and tranquilizer administered with careful measure. As the ropes tightened, pulling the panther upward inch by inch, Jabari stood beside the pulley, hands blistered but unwavering. When Nyoka finally emerged from the pit, limp but breathing, Jabari knelt beside him and whispered, "You held on." They laid the panther on soft leaves. Dr. Ian, the elder ranger, knelt to inspect the wounds and smiled softly. "He's strong, still fighting." As they worked to stabilize him, Nyoka's paw brushed lightly against Jabari's knee, a silent gesture, unteachable, unforgettable. Days passed. Nyoka recovered under canopy shade, his strength returning with each quiet hour. Jabari visited daily, never speaking much, just sitting nearby, letting presence speak where words could not. And in time, Nyoka stood again, not just a ghost of the jungle, but a living legend. He looked once at Jabari before vanishing into the green, and though the forest swallowed him whole, the boy smiled. The spirit of the forest was alive. The following morning, golden light filtered through the leaves as if the forest itself was exhaling. Rangers arrived with ropes, pulleys, and tranquilizers, tools of rescue, not conquest. Jabari led them straight to the pit, heart pounding with a mix of dread and hope. Nyoka was still alive, barely. His breathing shallow, his coat matted with blood and dust, but his eyes opened as Jabari knelt beside him once more. The rangers worked quickly and gently. A tranquilizer eased Nyoka's pain. Harnesses were lowered, and with immense care, the Black Panther was hoisted to the surface, his body limp but his spirit stirring. For a moment, all stood in silence, watching the living legend breathe again on solid ground. Jabari reached out, brushing a hand across Nyoka's flank. The panther stirred, and the contact passed between them like electricity. Recognition, gratitude, something sacred. Nyoka was transported to a nearby sanctuary hidden deep in the highlands, where he was treated, fed, and monitored. Word of his survival spread like wildfire. The villagers who once feared him now gathered at the sanctuary's edge, whispering prayers and songs. To them, he was more than a predator. He was the soul of the jungle, risen from death. Weeks later, stronger and silent as ever, Nyoka returned to the wild. And one morning, Jabari found a set of paw prints near his hut, deep, unmistakable, and fresh. He smiled. The ghost of the highlands had returned, not just as a legend, but as a promise that even the wild remembers kindness. The sanctuary air was thick with anticipation. Rangers, vets, and villagers watched as Nyoka, now healed but weathered, rose to his feet under the soft morning light. His coat, once dull with blood and dust, now shimmered like polished obsidian. But it was his eyes that drew the breath from those watching, fierce, steady, and alive with the fire of survival. With a slow but steady gait, Nyoka stepped beyond the gate, back into the jungle that had once both crowned and cursed him. Jabari stood at the edge of the trees, his heart pounding with pride and fear. The panther paused. Their eyes met one last time. No words, no roars, just mutual understanding of pain, courage, and the silent bond that had formed between boy and beast. Then, like smoke, Nyoka slipped into the forest. Whispers spread through the Nyamira Highlands, of sightings in the shadows, of fresh claw marks on tree trunks, of the gleam of golden eyes in moonlight. The legend had not died. It had returned, stronger, wiser, and more mysterious than ever. The villagers no longer feared him. They honored him. A mural appeared in the village's center, a boy offering meat to a wounded cat, a black panther perched atop a hill under a full moon. Below it, a single word etched in bold strokes, Nyoka. For those who doubted the wild still held magic, for those who forgot the power of mercy, the story of the Phantom King became a living reminder. Legends don't die, they rise, and they remember